The town of Elmridge was the kind of place people forgot about, not because it was empty, but because nothing ever seemed to change. The same streets, the same shops, the same quiet rhythm of life that repeated itself day after day. Mornings began with the soft ringing of the church bell. Afternoons passed with the gentle hum of conversations, and evenings settled into a calm silence that wrapped the town like a blanket. Emma Carter had always liked that, or at least, she thought she did. She lived above a small bookstore on Maple Street, a narrow shop with wooden shelves that stretched from floor to ceiling. The scent of old paper and polished wood filled the air, and sunlight slipped through the front windows in long golden lines. Every afternoon, Emma opened the store every morning at exactly 9 o'clock. She brewed tea at 9:10, and by 9:30, she would sit behind the counter, ready for the first customer, even though it was almost always the same person. Mr. Hargrove thought he would walk in slowly, nod politely, and ask, "Anything new today?" And Emma would smile and reply, "Only stories." It had become a routine, a comfortable one, but comfort, as Emma was beginning to realize, sometimes felt a lot like standing still. That morning started just like any other. Emma woke up to the soft sound of rain tapping against her window. The sky was pale gray, and the town below looked quieter than usual. She made her tea, got dressed, and walked downstairs. To open the bookstore, the bell above the door chimed softly as she unlocked it. "Another quiet day," she said to herself. She turned the sign to open and stepped behind the counter. Everything was exactly where it should be, until she noticed the envelope. It was lying neatly on the counter, right in the center, as if someone had placed it there with great care. Emma frowned. That's strange. She was certain it hadn't been there yesterday. She picked it up. The paper felt smooth, slightly heavier than usual. No stamp, no postal mark. Just her name written on the front in careful, steady handwriting. Emma Carter, her heart skipped slightly. Did someone come in early? She wondered aloud, but the door had been locked. She was sure of it. Slowly, she turned the envelope over, and that's when she noticed something even stranger. The date. It was written in the corner, small but clear. April 12th. Emma blinked. She glanced at the calendar hanging on the wall. April 11. That's tomorrow. A quiet stillness filled the room. Not an alarming one. Just unusual. She looked back at the envelope, as if expecting it to change in her hands. DIDN, single quotes, D. After a moment, she let out a small breath and gave a half smile. Okay. Maybe someone just wrote the wrong date, but something about it didn't feel like a mistake. She hesitated before opening it. It wasn't fear. It was the feeling you get when something small but important is about to happen. Carefully, she slid her finger under the seal and opened the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper. No decoration, no signature. Just a short message, written in the same neat handwriting. Emma read it once. Then again. Tomorrow at 3 p.m. Don't take the usual road home. Trust this. That was all. No explanation. No name. No reason. Emma lowered the paper slowly. What? She almost laughed. It sounded like something from one of the mystery novels she kept on the back shelf. She looked around the bookstore, half expecting someone to step out from behind a shelf and say it was a joke, but the store was empty, completely silent. Even the rain outside seemed softer now. Bell above the door chimed. Emma quickly folded the letter and placed it on the counter. Mr. Hargrove stepped in, shaking off his umbrella. "Morning, Emma," he said with his usual gentle nod. "Good morning," she replied, trying to sound normal. He looked at her for a moment. "You seem distracted today." Emma smiled faintly. "Just thinking." "About books?" he asked. She glanced at the envelope. "Something like that?" He didn't press further. As always, he wandered through the shelves, picked a book, and brought it to the counter. "Anything new today?" he asked. Emma paused. Then she said softly, "Maybe." The day continued, but something had shifted. Every small sound felt sharper. Every moment felt slightly different. Emma tried to focus on her work, organizing books, writing notes, helping the few customers who came in, but her thoughts kept returning to the letter. "Tomorrow, at 3 p.m. Don't take the usual road." She thought about her routine. She always closed the shop at 3. Always turned right at the corner. Always walked the same path home. She had never questioned it. Why would she? But now, she wondered what would happen if she didn't. By late afternoon, the rain had stopped. The sky cleared into a soft blue, and the town looked calm again, unchanged. As always, Emma locked the bookstore and stood outside for a moment. The street was quiet. Familiar. Safe. And yet, she reached into her pocket and touched the folded letter. "Who sent you?" she whispered. There was no answer, only a gentle breeze moving through the trees. That night, Emma couldn't sleep easily, not because she was worried, but because her mind wouldn't stop asking questions. Who wrote the letter? How did it get there? Why her? And most importantly, what would happen tomorrow at 3 p.m.? She turned toward the window. The town was still, peaceful, exactly as it had always been. But for the first time in a long while, Emma felt like something new was waiting just ahead. Not something dangerous, not something bad. Just different. She closed her eyes, holding on to that thought. Tomorrow at 3 p.m. she would decide whether to follow the path she always had or to trust a message from the future. And somewhere, deep inside, she already knew she was going to turn left. The next morning, Elmridge looked exactly the same. The same soft light over Maple Street. The same quiet rhythm. The same feeling that nothing would ever really change. But for Emma, everything already had. She woke up earlier than usual, long before the church bell rang. The sky outside her window was just beginning to brighten, painted in pale shades of blue and gold. For a moment, she lay still, staring at the ceiling. Then she remembered. The letter. 3 p.m. The different road. Emma sat up slowly and reached for the folded paper on her bedside table. She didn't need to read it again. She already knew every word. Still, she unfolded it carefully, as if it might reveal something new. It didn't. The message was exactly the same. Simple, quiet, certain. She traced the words with her eyes and whispered, "All right, I'll try." The morning passed slower than usual. Emma opened the bookstore, greeted a few early customers, and went through her routine, but everything felt slightly out of place. Not wrong, just different. She kept glancing at the clock. 10 minutes, 15 seconds, and 11 milliseconds. 2:12:37. Time moved, but it didn't feel normal. Even Mr. Hargrove noticed. "You're watching the clock today," he said, placing a book on the counter. Emma smiled faintly. "Am I?" "A little more than usual." She handed him his change, just curious about the day. He studied her for a moment, then nodded. "Double quotes while," he said gently. "Some days are worth paying attention to." Emma looked at him, slightly surprised. "I think this might be one of them." By the time afternoon arrived, the air had grown warmer. Sunlight poured through the front windows, casting long shadows across the wooden floor. Emma stood behind the counter, her hands resting lightly on its surface. The clock read 2:45 p.m. 15 minutes. She took a slow breath. "Okay," she whispered. "It's just a different way home." But it didn't feel that simple. It felt like a choice. A small one, but somehow important. At 2:55, Emma began closing the shop. She straightened the books, turned the sign to closed, and locked the door. The bell gave one last soft chime as it settled. The street outside was calm, familiar, exactly as it had always been. Emma stepped onto the sidewalk and looked down the road, to the right, the path she always took, past the bakery, across the small bridge, up the hill to her apartment, safe, predictable, certain. Then she looked to the left, a quieter street, one she rarely paid attention to, lined with trees she had never really noticed, leading somewhere unknown. Emma stood at the corner. The letter felt heavier in her pocket now. Don't take the usual road? She closed her eyes for a second, then exhaled. All right. And with that, she turned left. At first, nothing seemed different. The street was calm, just like the rest of Elmridge. A few houses stood quietly behind white fences. Curtains moved slightly in open windows. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked once, then fell silent. Emma walked slowly, taking everything in. I've lived here my whole life, she murmured, and I've never come this way. It felt strange, like discovering a hidden part of something she thought she knew completely. After a few minutes, the houses grew farther apart. The road narrowed, trees lined both sides now, their branches stretching gently overhead, letting sunlight filter through in soft, shifting patterns. And then Emma saw it, a small park, tucked between the trees, almost as if it had been waiting to be found. How did I never see this? She whispered. She stepped off the road and onto a narrow path leading inside. The park was simple. A few wooden benches, a small fountain in the center. Flowers growing in quiet corners. Untouched and natural. It wasn't grand, but it felt peaceful. More than that, it felt intentional. As if it existed for a reason. Emma walked slowly toward one of the benches, and that's when she noticed him. A man sitting quietly, facing the fountain. He wasn't doing anything unusual. Just sitting, watching the water. But something about him stood out. Not in a loud way. In a quiet one. Like he belonged there. Like he had always been there. Emma hesitated. She hadn't expected anyone. For a brief moment, she considered turning back. But then, the man spoke, without turning around. You're right on time. Emma stopped. Her heart skipped. Excuse me? Kind. And yet, there was something in his eyes. Something that felt familiar. You came at 3, he said. That's good. Emma's breath caught. Do I know you? The man smiled gently. Not yet. A quiet pause filled the air. Emma stepped closer, her curiosity stronger than her hesitation. Did you send the letter? He looked at her for a moment, then nodded. Double quotes, yes. Emma exhaled slowly, a mix of relief and confusion. Okay. Then you're going to explain this, right? The man stood up from the bench. Of course, he said calmly, but it might not be the kind of explanation you expect. Emma crossed her arms slightly, still trying to understand. Try me. He glanced at the fountain, then back at her. The short version? He said. Emma nodded. He smiled softly. The town you live in? He paused for just a second. Doesn't experience time the way you think it does. Emma blinked. What? The man gestured toward the park, the trees, the quiet space around them. Most people here live the same days, in the same ways, without noticing. Emma frowned slightly. That's just routine. Is it? He asked gently. She hesitated. Yes. He tilted his head, studying her expression. Then why did you turn left today? Emma didn't answer immediately. Because she didn't have a simple answer. The fountain continued to flow quietly between them. The air felt still, peaceful. Beneath it, something had shifted. Emma looked at the man again. Who are you? He smiled, just a little. Someone who noticed the pattern, he said. and decided to change it. Emma felt that same quiet chill from yesterday, not fear, something deeper. "And now?" she asked. He looked at her carefully. "Now," he said, "I think it's your turn." Emma stood there, in a park she had never seen, speaking to someone she had never met. And yet, somehow it didn't feel impossible, Dot. It felt like the beginning of something she didn't fully understand yet, but something she was ready to. Here, for the first time in her life, Emma wasn't just following the day. She was stepping outside of it, and somewhere, quietly. The town of Elmridge seemed to notice. Emma stood still for a moment, letting his words settle. The town doesn't experience time the way you think it does. It sounded impossible, and yet, nothing about the last 2 days had felt ordinary. She looked around the park again. The soft movement of the trees, the steady flow of the fountain, the quiet stillness that felt almost protected. Then she looked back at him. "Start from the beginning," she said. The man nodded, as if he had expected that. "All right," he replied calmly. "But I need you to do something first." Emma raised an eyebrow slightly. "What?" "Think about yesterday," he said. "Not the letter. Just your day." Emma hesitated, then tried. "I woke up, opened the bookstore, saw Mr. Hargrove organize shelves, closed at 3. Her voice slowed, "and went home." The man tilted his head slightly. "And the day before that?" Emma blinked. "Pretty much the same." "And the day before that?" She paused, then gave a small, uncertain smile. "Okay, I get your point." He didn't smile back this time, not because he was serious, but because he wanted her to see it clearly. "This town," he said quietly, "is built on repetition." Emma crossed her arms, thinking, that's just how small towns are. "Not like this," he replied. There was something in his voice gentle, but certain that made her pause. He stepped closer to the fountain, watching the water. "Most people here," he continued, "don't notice how similar their days are. Not because they're not paying attention, but because the changes are too small." Emma leaned slightly against the back of the bench. "So what are you saying?" He glanced at her. "I'm saying the days don't just feel the same." He paused. "They're very close to being the same." Emma frowned. "That doesn't make sense." "It doesn't need to," he said softly. "Not yet." A quiet breeze passed through the park. Leaves shifted gently above them. Emma looked down at her hands, then back at him. "You sent me a letter from tomorrow." He nodded. Double quotes, "Yes." "That shouldn't be possible." "I know." "And you're saying the town is repeating itself?" "Not exactly repeating," he said. "More like staying within a narrow path." Emma sighed slightly. "You're going to have to explain that better this time." He smiled. "I will." He pointed toward the path Emma had taken to enter the park. "Today, you made a different choice." Emma followed his gaze. "I turned left. Something you've never done before." She nodded slowly. "I guess. And because of that," he continued, "you ended up here." Emma looked around again. The park felt even more significant now. "So this place only exists if I choose differently?" He shook his head. "No, it always exists." "Then why haven't I seen it before?" He met her eyes. "Because your days never brought you here." That answer stayed with her. Simple, but unsettling in a quiet way. Emma pushed herself off the bench and walked a few steps, thinking, "So you're saying nothing is forcing me to repeat my days?" "Correct, but I still do." "Yes." "Why?" The man watched her carefully. "Because it's easier." Emma didn't respond immediately, because she knew that was true. She thought about her routine. The same morning, the same customers. The same path home. It had never felt like a problem. It had felt safe. "And the letter?" she asked. "Why send that?" The man took a slow breath. Because small changes matter. Emma turned to face him again. You could have just come to the bookstore. I could have, he agreed. But then you wouldn't have made the choice on your own. Emma tilted her head slightly. So this was a test? He shook his head gently. No, a nudge. The word hung in the air. Emma repeated it quietly. A nudge. He nodded. Something to show you that your path isn't fixed. Emma looked down at the ground, then back at the road beyond the trees. For the first time, she noticed something strange. The light. It hadn't changed much. The shadows hadn't moved very far. What time is it? She asked. The man glanced at his watch. Still around 3. Emma blinked. That's not possible. I've been here for a while. He didn't seem surprised. That happens sometimes. A quiet realization began to form. Time feels slower here, she said. He nodded. Different places. Different moments? They don't always move at the same pace. Emma looked at the fountain again. The water flowed steadily, unchanged. So this park is slightly outside your usual rhythm, he finished. Emma let out a small breath. That's a lot to take in. I know. She sat back down on the bench. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence wasn't awkward, that it was thoughtful. Then Emma asked, Why me? The man didn't answer right away. Instead, he studied her expression, as if making sure she was ready to hear it. Finally, he said, Because you noticed the letter. Emma frowned slightly. That's it? He shook his head. No. He smiled, just a little. You didn't ignore it. Emma thought about that. She could have. She almost had. It would have been easy to laugh it off. To follow her usual path. To never question it. But she didn't. So what happens now? She asked. The man stepped back slightly, giving her space. That depends on you. Emma raised an eyebrow. You're not going to give me another letter? He smiled. Not this time. The breeze picked up again, gently moving through the park. Emma stood slowly. Her mind felt different now. Not overwhelmed. Not confused. Just open. She looked toward the path she came from. Then at the man. If I go back, she said, will everything be the same again? He considered the question. Mostly. And if I don't? He smiled slightly. Then you'll start seeing more. Emma let out a quiet laugh. You're very calm about all this. I've had time to get used to it. That doesn't surprise me. She took a few steps toward the edge of the park. Then stopped. Will I see you again? The man didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked toward the fountain. Then back at her. Maybe. Emma narrowed her eyes slightly. That's not a real answer. It's an honest one. She nodded slowly. All right. Then, after a pause, she added, I think I want to see more. The man's expression softened. I thought you might. Emma turned back toward the path. This time, it didn't feel like just a walk home. It felt like a beginning. Quiet shift. A step into something she didn't fully understand yet, but was ready to explore. And as she left the park, the town of Elmridge continued as always. Calm, predictable, unchanged. But now Emma wasn't just living in it. She was starting to notice it. And that changed everything. Emma stepped out of the park slowly, as if crossing an invisible line. Behind her, the quiet stillness remained. Ahead of her, the familiar town of Elmridge. But something felt different now. Not outside. Inside. She walked down the street, noticing things she had never paid attention to before. The way the light reflected in windows. The sound of footsteps echoing slightly differently on certain parts of the road. The rhythm of people passing by almost like they were following a pattern she had never questioned. Was it always like this? She murmured. When she reached the corner, she stopped. This was where she would normally turn right. But now, She had already come from somewhere new. So instead, she just stood there for a moment. Thinking. A small decision formed. Simple. But intentional. Instead of going straight home, Emma turned toward the bakery. Not because she needed anything, just because she never did that before. Inside, the warm smell of fresh bread filled the air. The baker smiled. "Good afternoon." "The usual?" Emma paused. For the first time, she said, "Actually, no." The word felt surprisingly important. She chose something different. Sat by the window, watched the street. Time felt normal again, but she was aware of it now. Every second, every choice. After a while, Emma stood up and stepped outside. The town hadn't changed, but her path had. And that was enough. As she walked home, she reached into her pocket. The letter was still there. Quiet. Unchanged. But now it meant something new. Emma looked down the street, then up at the sky. "Okay," she said softly, "one step at a time." And somewhere, not far away, the man in the park watched the fountain. A small smile on his face, because the pattern hadn't broken, but it had shifted. And that was how it always began. The next morning, Emma didn't wake up early because she had to. She woke up because she wanted to. Sunlight filled her room, warmer than usual, or maybe she was just noticing it more. The town outside looked the same: quiet streets, familiar rooftops, the soft rhythm of another ordinary day. But Emma no longer saw it as ordinary. She sat by the window for a moment, thinking. Not about the letter, not about the man. Just about the day ahead. When she opened the bookstore, everything was exactly where it had always been. The shelves. The counter. The soft creak of the wooden floor. And right on time, the bell above the door chimed. Mr. Hargrove stepped in. "Morning, Emma," he said. "Good morning," she replied with a small smile. He looked at her for a moment, slightly curious. "You seem different today." Emma tilted her head just a little. "Do I?" "A little," he said. "Can't quite explain it." She smiled. "I think I just noticed something." He nodded, as if that was enough. "Anything new today?" he asked. As always. Emma paused. Then answered, "Yes." The day moved forward, but not in the same way as before. Emma changed small things. She rearranged a section of books she had left untouched for years. She spoke longer with customers instead of keeping conversations short. She stepped outside in the middle of the day, just to feel the air and watch the street. Nothing dramatic, nothing loud. Just different. At exactly 3 p.m., Emma stood by the door of the bookstore. The same moment as yesterday. The same choice. But this time, there was no letter in her pocket. No instructions. No guidance. She stepped outside and looked at the corner. Right. Left. Forward. 4. The first time, it didn't feel like one path was correct. They were all just possibilities. Emma smiled softly. "Okay." And without overthinking, she started walking. Not left. Not right, but straight. A direction she had never taken before. The town unfolded in new ways. Streets she hadn't explored, shops she hadn't noticed. Small details that had always been there but had never been part of her story. Until now. As she walked, something interesting happened. Time didn't feel stuck. It didn't feel slow. It didn't feel repetitive. It felt open. Emma stopped for a moment and looked back. Not at the bookstore. Not at the road she used to take, but at the idea of it. The routine, the pattern, the version of her who never questioned it. She didn't feel regret, just understanding. It was never about escaping the town, she said quietly. It was about seeing it differently. A gentle breeze moved through the street. And for just a second, she thought about the park, Dot about the man. Dot, as if on cue. A familiar voice spoke behind her. You're walking a new way. Again, Emma turned. There he was, calm as always, like he had simply stepped into the moment at the right time. Dot, she smiled. I guess I am. He looked around the street, then back at her. And how does it feel? Emma thought for a second, then answered honestly. Like I have more time. He nodded slightly. That's a good sign. They stood there, not as strangers anymore, not quite as friends either, but something in between. Two people who understood something others hadn't noticed yet. So what happens now? Emma asked. The man smiled. Now? He looked down the road ahead. Now there are more paths. Emma followed his gaze. For the first time, the town didn't feel small. It felt endless. She took a step forward, then another. No hesitation this time. And as the day continued, Elmridge remained the same quiet town it had always been. The same streets, the same people. The same rhythm. But for Emma, time was no longer something that simply passed. It was something she could shape, one choice at a time. And somewhere, in the quiet spaces between moments, the town didn't just remember yesterday, that began to notice tomorrow.